Welcome to Blackbird Writers Presents. I am Tracey Phillips, and today I'm talking to Virginia Franken. Virginia Franken was born and raised in the UK and is the author of Life After Coffee and Half Sisters. She graduated from the University of Roehampton in London with a degree in dance and worked on cruise ships as a professional dancer before changing tracks to pursue a career in publishing. Virginia currently lives in suburban LA with her family, and she gets most of her writing done when she should be sleeping.
Yeah.
Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is so great. And I really enjoyed Half Sisters.
Oh, thanks.
It has that sibling rivalry and some, jilted lover things going on and all kinds of good stuff that all psychological thrillers need. So, yeah.
It's a crazy one. Basically the books, I'd say the main theme is denial, denial, long, slow cook revenge, and who decides what the truth is. Matilda, she's the main heroine, and she's basically like the perfect wife and mother and friend, or at least she's trying to be. We're all trying to be the best version of ourselves that we can be in this difficult world. But then we see, her relationships are crumbling, her business are crumbling, maybe her mind is crumbling. And then eventually we see herself, we see her getting into like these situations that are just devolving. Things are just getting worse and worse. And it kind of becomes clear, further towards the end, that she's brought this on herself a little bit just through her need to be perfect and the fact that she can't make mistakes. She's very competitive with her half sister, and she's kind of in this competition with her half sister to be like number one when it comes to receiving love. And I think that's basically what becomes her undoing. So
right,
it's basically about, what happens to us if we don't know ourselves and if we're not accepting of our flaws. And, you have to kind of be open to who you are and what you've done, and don't live in a state of denial because it might catch up with you.
It might, especially if you're, yes, living in this book.
Living in that book, yes.
So it's a standalone psychological thriller, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's also that she's waiting for the cash out from an inheritance, and her half sister has like vanished like years ago. And so she kind of is sitting around waiting for her to reappear. And let's talk a little bit about how she gets back into the story.
Yeah. Emily just kind of sneaks up on you, she kind of sneaks back into the situation in kind of unusual ways.
Well, through the husband.
Through the husband, yeah. Who, by coincidence kind of bumps into her in New York. And Matilda's like, well, this is strange because I haven't seen this woman in 20 years and
right,
bumping into her. And then I don't want to give too much away, but
right.
We find it's not such a coincidence. But yeah, it's just that kind of thing of sibling dynamics. I mean, luckily I get on pretty well with both of my sisters. We never really had to like compete for love of
well, hopefully
person. Not. Right. I mean, I think it's, when you're growing up in a family, there's parental love. And I don't know if there's a favorite at some point, maybe that sets people up for weird dynamics. And I know like in the backstory, kind of like the history of the two of them growing up, there was maybe that dynamic that wasn't great, where both parents kind of felt a lot more love toward Matilda than they did to Emily, because Emily showed up, when she was a teenager pretty much. But then Emily managed to twist things a little bit. So the mother started to give more attention to Emily. Matilda didn't like that. I mean, that's in the ancient past, but it's kind of like these things happen in the past and then they kind of get reflected into the future.
Right.
The same kind of dynamics. And I think I've always noticed that in families is patterns tend to repeat through families and also through decades sometimes.
Yeah,
I mean, a weird example,
it's
like,
definitely true.
yeah, like the royal family of Britain.
Oh,
Back in the day, they had Wallace Simpson, who was an American, bit of, considered a bit of an outcast. And the guy abdicated, I think it was King George, in order to be with her.
right.
Forward all these years, Meghan Markle shows up, American, divorced, they're different. Prince Harry, leaves to be with her. They have this massive love story. And it seems like, and it's a weird example, but like the same stories repeat like through families. Sometimes I think they repeat through decades. So I guess that's kind of an example.
Yeah, it is really interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
The repeats. Yeah.
Yeah.
Watch out for the repeats, and I guess try and learn from them. So it doesn't
Yeah.
happen the
How do you
next time.
stop it? How do you
How do
stop it?
I think, make a different choice. And to use the royal family again, I think the Queen did try and do something a bit different last time, because last time Wallace Simpson and King George are separated, and this time she blessed the marriage, but it didn't work out in a different way.
Right.
So I think it's sometimes just karma's there just to get you, and whatever path you take, you're just screwed.
Gosh, I hope not.
Yeah. Says the duck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Suspense author.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you did such a great job with the sibling dynamics in this book, and now you've said you have sisters, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Two dear sweet sisters who are not evil.
Yeah, so you didn't draw from your experiences.
I didn't draw from my experience there. Kind of this book was based. I used to work in London in this publishing house as an editorial assistant, and I don't want to get too specific with names, but the guy who ran the publishing house, he was clearly so in love with his wife, and she would come into the office all the time, bring their 3 children. She would call him all day long. And when they were together, they were just so sweet. And I said to someone I worked with one day, wow, those two, they really cracked it. They have this great marriage, isn't that fantastic? And she said, well, you would think so after everything they went through to get together. And I was like, well, what happened? And she said, well, before they got married, the husband, was dating her older sister for 10 years.
Oh.
And then at the end of the 10 years, he said, you know what? Your younger sister was the one I was in love with all of these years. So I'm going to split up with you. And then shortly after that, they got married. And I just think, it's bananas.
Yeah, it is.
It's just bananas. And I think it's a lot.
But then you're like, oh, wow, that needs to be a story that's told.
Yeah, well, it was funny because, you hear something like that and you kind of, you're scandalized for one day and then you forget about it. But then it would just crop up in my brain every now and again, like over the years that passed. And one day I was like, that I think it happens more often than you think. And I think that might be a good basis for a story. 2 women who fall in love with the same man, and it so happens that they're sisters, and they have this awkward backstory, and this and that, and all these other things compounding the situation and making it just difficult.
Yeah.
And that's basically where the story came from.
Yeah, and I can see that now. Wow. So did you do any other research for this book?
Yeah, it's actually based on the town where I live, which is Monrovia, California. So really, every time I left my front door, it was research. I have a porch, much like Matilda has a very cute porch in the opening scene. She's kind of sitting on that porch, knocking back wine with her bestie, which is something I do as well. I sit on that porch and look out, and it has this really amazing kind of crazy mountain backdrop. So that was an inspiration. The architecture of the town, it's kind of this Art Deco stuff. It's recently been discovered because it's quite close to LA, so it's being rapidly gentrified, which is similar to the story. So a lot of detail of that was just me kind of just writing what I saw in the town.
Yeah.
The community is very interconnected as well. And I had a friend who's a firefighter. So a lot of the firefighter detail I got from him. I would text him like these bananas questions. And he would get back like, that's a crazy question. Why you ask me that weird detail? And I'd be like, well, I just need to know. Just give me the answer. Don't ask questions, just give me the answer. And he always would. He was very generous. So yeah, that's kind of, you know, then you just do like the general research, add some legal detail and stuff in there. And, you know, luckily for authors these days, we could just go boom straight to the internet and it's all there.
Yeah, so, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In being an author like 30 or 40 years ago, you'd have to like call people on the phone or go to the library or something.
Yeah. Or, you know, but I feel like still traveling to a location, if you're writing right now, I happen to be writing about Greece and what I would give to be able to just go there right now. And I can't travel because of a personal situation with my pet. But, but, you know, I just like to be there and smell the smells and feel the air and the vibe and all of that. How that,
you
know,
I think that really lends something to the writing when you can immerse yourself like that. Have you been to Greece in the past?
I have not. So I'm getting all of my information from online,
right?
You know, walkthroughs.
Very famous novel, Twilight. You may have heard of it. And I know she had never been to Forks. And she literally just kind of looked on a map and said, that's probably where it's based. And then she just watched videos. So I think it's definitely can be done.
Oh, I know. I mean, I know you can do it. And I know some authors who do too, but I feel like sometimes, you know, being there, you are able to put it on the page in such a real way too.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your background is actually in dance, which I think is interesting because mine is in music. But how or why did you change career paths?
Well, basically, yeah, I was a dancer on cruise ships for a long time, and I just loved that job. Then I got married, and boo, things changed. You know, it's hard to be jumping off on a cruise ship. They're like 9-month contracts and stuff. So I gave up my dance career and kind of moved into publishing. And then I think for all those years, kind of the outlet for my creativity was dance. And then when that just stopped overnight, dried up, it just kind of bubbled out in other ways. And I think that was the writing. But I thought about being a writer for a long time before I actually did any writing.
Yeah.
But even like the thinking about it, I think was kind of a creative outlet for me. So that's kind of the why I changed from one to the other.
Yeah. Do you feel like, are the industries at all like similar?
Yeah, I think so. You know, dance obviously is very rhythmic. There's always like a rhythm to everything you do.
I think about that in music, with music too.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. So I think my writing, when I write a sentence, I go back and I make sure I kind of rewrite it till it feels rhythmically right to me. And then, you know, that coupled with the next sentence as well. I don't know if you have that as well. Kind of you analyze sentences for rhythm.
I think about that a lot, actually. And and a lot of my, you know, when I think of music, like I listen to a lot of classical music and orchestral and, you know, symphonies and that kind of thing. And I think about how music, you know, tells a story in a way.
Definitely.
And sure, popular music too, if you want a short story. Right?
Taylor Swift. Yeah, she has a story.
But I think about like all of the layers of the instruments and that I tend to try to, you know, replicate in my writing as well.
Yeah, that's super cool. And then I would imagine you play musical instrument like piano or whatever. Do you find it helps you with like the emotional conveyance? Because obviously, you know, when you're writing, it can be emotional and you're expressing emotion, so the reader feels that emotion. And I think that's something also with like creative things like music and dance. If you're doing it well, you're playing the piano with emotion, so the audience hears it. And when you're dancing, you're either it's emotional, it's upbeat, or it's dramatic. You know, dance can tell a story as well.
Right.
So yeah, we were already storytellers before we were storytellers.
Exactly. Yeah, that's, I mean, art. It's art. It's all expression, right?
Expression. Yeah. It's supposed to be anyway.
Have you been to any concerts or performances recently that inspired you to create?
Well, I probably, if you consider Netflix a concert or performance, then,
Sure.
we could
It's a
expand the
venue.
definition there. It's a venue. The venue is my living room, or sometimes it's my phone in the living room. Yeah, I've been, Netflix TV's been great for a long time now. Really expanded. I was watching, I don't know if you saw Beef.
Mm-mm.
It's so good. It's basically this really interconnected story about these two people who come together by complete accident. They have this interaction, and then their lives just get so connected and woven together. And they get into this tit for tat thing, and it becomes like, who owes who what? So that was kind of fascinating to me, kind of this back and forth they had between them. And I find that when I get inspiration, like, things come to me in clusters. So I watched Debt, which was really interesting. And then I randomly watched a movie called The Covenant, which is about two men in Iraq, and one of them saves the other one's life. And then in return, that person basically saves that other person's life. But it's difficult. They have so many challenges. And it would be very easy for them to give up and not do that. So their lives get really connected. And it's like, what do we owe another person who saved our life? And then I was reading Debt by David Graeber, who's this amazing kind of economist writer in London. Well, he's dead now, unfortunately, but he was living in London. And he was writing about financial debt, but behind money and finance, it's like, it's backed by, what does one person owe another in society? So all these things were coming to me together at once. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really inspiring. And it just made me think, about social boundaries and what we owe each other, what the social contracts are, what happens when we don't follow those things, and we kind of go off on our own path and kind of invert those things. So, I think when you're a writer, you don't live in a vacuum. You're always just getting inspiration through people you meet. For me, Netflix. Weird economists living in London who unfortunately died a few years ago. But
no, that sounds really, really fascinating. On my list now.
yeah, Debt by David Graeber. He's written some amazing books. He also wrote another one called Bullshit Jobs, which is my Bible for a while. Basically about, how people go to the corporate world and sometimes they don't have any work to do, and they sit there day in, day out with not much to do. And there's whole swats of people living like this, and it's just bananas. So he just
crazy.
He peels out the lid off things and kind of exposes it for truth. So he's pretty amazing.
There's a story in there somewhere,
right?
Yes,
I think there is. What happens?
Yeah.
You're just forced to be in a room for 8 hours a day. What kind of romances develop? You go crazy.
Yeah.
What crushes secrets?
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Yeah, you're on it.
It's your idea though. Sorry.
Yeah. No, take it. Run with it.
What's your writing schedule like?
Oh, well, I have a corporate job. Of course, it's enormously fulfilling and nothing like the situation I just described. But basically, it takes a lot of my time. So I get up really early in the morning, 4 or 5, and then I write for an hour, and then I commute and do my day job, because by the time I get home, I've got no mental capacity left. And then I write weekends as well, normally Saturday mornings, when my other half watches our child. And then sometimes I take vacation time off from work, and that's when I tend to do like big kind of sections of planning. So basically, it's just grab the time that I can get. But I do find it quite important to schedule the time.
Yeah.
Because if I just try and grab time too haphazardly, it's like my brain can't get into the routine or the rhythm of it.
Right. Do you have advice for aspiring writers?
Yeah, I would say, just do it because you love it. And by that, I mean, kind of try and separate yourself from the result. Because I know I've wasted a lot of time in my life wanting certain results, upset because in the early days, I wasn't getting the result I wanted. And when you kind of get through that and come out the other side, you realize there is no result that's going to make you completely just happy and content in your life. So really the only kind of predictable joy you're going to get from this experience is the joy of the writing, and that's it. So I would say, you know, separate yourself from the result. And I would also say, like, you know, I know people really kind of struggle with the rejection aspect, which is something, you know, every single writer has dealt with.
Mhm.
And I actually have one practical tip, which is get hypnotized. I actually had hypnosis to stop me worrying about rejection. And it really worked, because the minute after I got this hypnosis and got through the series, I immediately got my agent and then got my writing contract, and things started really picking up. And I think it's because I'd let go of that feeling of like, oh, I am rejected, I am a failure. And the moment I let go of that, I think everything loosened. So
Wow.
get yourself hypnotized.
Well, that's great advice.
It
I
can
would
be
do that for
wonderful
my
motivation.
performance anxiety.
Oh, do you
Yeah.
work with music, or
Yeah.
yeah, have you been hypnotized for
No,
it?
I haven't. That's
Oh,
why
I
I
really
said now I'm
recommend it.
thinking about it.
Yeah, I recommend it. And honestly, you do like 1 or 2 sessions and you're through it. And they say it's the same with like quitting smoking or something. They
Huh,
say you do 1 or 2 sessions, you're more or less cured, and then it's just kind of top up from there.
huh,
Yeah, would recommend it.
fascinating. Well, what are you working on now, Virginia?
Oh yeah, I'm working on a book called Queen of Coins. I'm going back and forth with my agent right now, making a million bazillion edits. It's basically, it's in the same vein as Half Sisters, another psychological suspense. It's about a lonely divorcee who makes a wonderful new friend, and she thinks this woman is great, but then as she's getting to know her, she comes to discover that she's in an abusive relationship. And what's worse is she hasn't woken up to that reality. She's in denial about this abusive relationship. So while, you know, the divorcee is trying to save her from herself and kind of open her eyes and try and get together to make a plan to escape this relationship, she starts to discover things about this woman. And as she goes deeper, the whole situation gets turned on its head. And it's kind of an exploration of like female friendships, again, social boundaries, all those other books I was talking about, what we owe each other, the role of the bystander. You know, if you see something, say something, like how much of an obligation do you have to like follow that through to its kind of final conclusion. So I really enjoyed writing it. I think I enjoyed writing it the most out of all of my novels. And I don't know, I hope good things happen. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Well, we'll be looking for it. You'll have to, let me know when
I will definitely let you know.
getting close to being released and all
Get to your
that.
birthday, I will definitely let you know.
Yeah, that would be great. And where can readers find your books or you?
Yeah, I'm at virginiafranken.com, and then books can be found on amazon.com.
Great. Well, thanks so much for chatting with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been really, fun to chat with you.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
All right, see you soon. Bye.